everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Spouse Angle. It's time for another feature episode, which we've started doing for the last episode of every month this season. And today I am so excited to introduce to you guys Marla Bautista. Marla is an Army spouse of 13 years, an author, freelance writer, blogger, and speaker. She is also the co-founder of the Bautista Project, Inc., which is a nonprofit organization helping homeless members of her community. Marla's coming to you from Tampa, Florida, where she lives with her husband and their 3 children. So Marla, welcome to the show.
Awesome. Thank you for having me, Natalie. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. And I know we write for some of the same publications. So I've, followed your work, followed your story on social media for a long time. It's really touching. But I'm really excited to actually talk to you kind of face to face here and get to know you today.
Awesome.
As face to face as you can be during a pandemic, I suppose.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know I gave a brief introduction, but I would love it if you could tell listeners a little bit more about you, what's going on in your life right now, and some of the work that you do.
Yeah, so I'm Marla. I am an Army spouse, like Natalie said. We are currently stationed at MacDill Air Force Base in Tampa, Florida, and we are loving it here. That was a side note, but I had to plug in Tampa just because we came from, so this is our reward. If you've ever been to upstate New York, you know that the weather there can be pretty funky. So I'm so excited to be here in Tampa, and I have to give Tampa a huge shout out for their weather. But I am here with my husband, who is in the Army, and we have 3 children, and he has been in for 17 years. We've been married 13 of those years. And we've moved all over the world. I used to be self-proclaimed famous for having a baby at every duty station, but that has since ceased. The last 2 duty stations, I'm happy to announce that I have been kid-free. Not kid-free, but pregnancy and kid-free. I had a baby.
Baby.
Yes, baby free. Every time I moved, there was this weird cycle where every time we moved, I moved with a new 1-year-old. So first time, our first duty station in Hawaii, we moved to Germany, and I had a 1-year-old, and that was our first kid. And then when we moved from Germany to Colorado, I moved with a kid and then a new 1-year-old. And then when we moved from Colorado to New York, I moved with 2 kids and a new 1-year-old. So I'm like, finally, it's like everyone's adding a new human to our travels. And so we are no longer adding humans. So I'm super excited about that. In the last one, 5, he's 5 years old, and he is our super helper. And so what we do is it's a family thing. Our organization, the Bautista Project, Inc., started off as a personal mission of our families. We started visiting the jail in Germany. We used to visit the military prison, Coleman Barracks, and we used to hang out with the soldiers there and have church at the military prison in Germany. And that was many, many years ago. And then we started feeding homeless community members, and it just kind of grew from there. And so we were using our own money, and, our kids were helping make sandwiches and hygiene bags. And every duty station we moved to, we just continued to do it, and it continued to grow until finally we were like, okay, we need help. We need outside help because my husband's paycheck wasn't holding on to, feeding our family and the entire community. But I'm like, oh, we're fine. Well, we're fine. And we were always fine. And that's the good thing about, doing good. I believe that when you do good, it comes back to you. And so for us, we were always okay, no matter how much food we gave out, no matter how much hygiene products we provided for community members, no matter what we gave them, we were always okay. But we had to expand. We wanted to grow. And so we started the nonprofit organization. And prior to starting that, we did start to outsource for funding. And so we started with our military friends and our family. And they really helped us get growing, and they helped us provide even more meals and more hygiene and more transportation vouchers and winter clothing and just all types of things that are much needed necessities for homeless community members. And so once we started the nonprofit, we then realized, okay, now we need a team of people. We need a board, And so my experience with having a board was I was a president of Spouses Club at Fort Drum in New York. So I had kind of some experience with managing, a nonprofit board. So I brought that experience, which that was a plug for volunteering as a military spouse. Definitely volunteer, because that experience is so much more than just volunteering. Um, it's job experience, it's employment experience. Whether you're paid or not, it's still a job. And so I brought that experience here to our organization, and so we just started to grow and build our board, and now we are going in the fast lane, and we have expanded so much, and we're just doing so much here in Tampa, and we're just so excited for everyone that is a part of our team, and everyone is a part of our team, because it's not just us, it's not just our board members, it's our community, our village, and all of our friends who are doing the same things. Even if they're not doing it with us, they are still a part of our village, because we can't end homelessness by ourselves. It takes all of us everywhere. And so all of my friends are like, oh my God, you inspired me to go hand out food and hygiene and, take out some clothes to homeless community members. I'm like, that's awesome. Please keep doing that, because we have it, especially as military families. As much as we move, I'm not sure about you, Natalie, but when my family moves, we like to dump our whole house in the trash and then buy a whole new. I don't know if that's a thing or if it's just my family, but I'm like, I really don't know about this furniture or these curtains anymore. And then, we redecorate. And so put that stuff to good use. Don't just throw it out, or, you can give it to, like a thrift store or whatnot. But there are so many families who are in need that you can directly help with those things. Baby clothing that's too small for your children, shoes, any of that stuff, they can use that stuff. And so for me, I like to encourage people to, give that stuff to people on the streets, because they absolutely need it. And it's not only helping them, it's kind of helping you too, because you're getting rid of this stuff. So that is kind of where we're at here. We are in the process of getting a headquarters building for our organization, because we have grown out of our home.
That's
Yeah, so we're
awesome.
super excited about that. So more details to come on that soon.
Yeah, I can just see the passion in your face. For those of you listening, Marla and I are doing a video chat, and I just see it in your face. And I know from having read your story that this is a cause that's extremely personal to you. You were actually homeless, right? As a teenager?
Yes. So I actually experienced homelessness. I was a child who came from a harsh environment. And before I was 10 years old, both of my biological parents had died. And I was abused until I was about 18 years old. And then I was thrown out onto the streets. And I didn't have anything. And so, going from shelters to couch surfing to jail, even, that was a really hard thing for a young woman to go through. And I learned so much on the streets, but I really could have used some guidance and some assistance and a little bit of love and support too. And so I'm determined today to do that. I promised myself that if I were to ever overcome homelessness, that I would do the same thing that these people, this group of people, did for me. And that was a group of people at this Catholic church in downtown Denver. There were these churchgoers at the Catholic church. They would feed lunch to homeless community members. And so as the line wrapped around the building, we would wait in line to eat. And while we were waiting in line, these little older people would come and hand us like little sandwich bags with like a small deodorant and a toothpaste and a toothbrush and just some really super basic things that we take for granted every day. And they would hand us that stuff, and that was like life changing. It really touched my heart, because they didn't ask me for anything, they didn't want anything from me, they just wanted me to be better. and they wanted me to be okay. And so those little kind gestures helped me realize my purpose in life was to do the same thing, was to give back to people in need. Because a lot of times we'll focus on things like hygiene as something. I mean, I can tell you right now, in my house, I can't tell you how many bars of soap for my family, and how many half-used bottles of lotion and shampoos and all that stuff. But for someone on the street, that stuff is really hard to come by. And I actually stole some of that stuff before. And that's something that a lot of people don't get to see. When they see people who have gone to jail, they don't realize why. And so that's my mission, is to bring awareness to that why. Um, I used to steal aspirin and things that I needed. And it was like, you know what? I think about it today, like I would rather give somebody $5 to go buy a bottle of aspirin than for them to add a whole entire criminal charge to their record for stealing a bottle of aspirin. And so that's super important to me today, because when we look at those mug shots, or when we look at those people, we don't see those people. We see what those people did. And I really want people to see those people. I want them to see the why, the who, because that's something that we kind of get away from here in America, especially this year. We've gotten so closed in with ourselves, and not just because of the pandemic. This is just something we've been growing towards with digital media and all that stuff. We just kind of gotten enclosed within ourselves, where we don't really care how other people are feeling, how they're living. And so we have become kind of desensitized to the human life itself. And so I will tell you like a quick story that just happened here in Florida. A guy was killed by the police after robbing a Dollar General. And so I bring up this story because when most people look at that, they're like, well, he shouldn't have done that. He was willing to risk his life. And when he died, they had the video dash cam, or the what is it called, the body cam from the cops.
Yeah.
And so they saw him, and they told him to put up his hands and all that stuff. And he reached for something and they killed him. But what I saw was, when I saw that guy reach for something, I saw a black trash bag that was half full. And when I saw that, my question went to, what was in that bag? What was in that bag that he was willing to die for? At Dollar General, they don't sell guns, they don't sell alcohol, they don't have millions of dollars in the cash register. What did he die for? Did he die for underwear? Did he die for laundry soap? Did he die for something that we take for granted every single day? And so that's what I want people to start recognizing and looking at. And I want to know that why. I want to know the who. Because those people are people out there. They're not just some random homeless person. Those people have had jobs, they had careers, they have educations. And yeah, there are some of them who are disabled physically or even mentally, but we want to know who they are. And that's the biggest gift you can give somebody. If you can't feed them, if you can't give them hygiene, and you don't have money or anything like that, at least say hello. Look them in their eye and say, how are you? And let them tell you, because that's important. And that's something that we've kind of gotten away from. And it's not just, from us to homeless people, it's from us to us. We are all getting away from the human nature. We need that stuff. They also need that. They need that human interaction, that interpersonal communication. And if they don't have access to that via a cell phone, having social media, or, just human contact, that kills people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I love what you're doing, and I can see it's definitely out of a passion for that. And thank you so much for what you do. First of all, let me say that. What were some of the most influential people or experiences that helped you out of that situation and helped you get to where you are today?
So I have one huge influence. There was a lot of influences, positive people who told me a lot of things along the way, who helped guide me. I was in a program called Denver Kids that was for children without fathers. And just having that time away, where someone cared about you and wanted to take you to lunch and things of that nature helped. But my biggest influence was a case manager, actually. And so when I went to jail, I got put on probation, and it was just not a great situation for me. And I didn't. The cost of being in the system is egregious. Like, you wouldn't even imagine the expectations put on someone in the system, the amount of money that they're paying. It's a really hard thing. And so I had this lady, and I never, my mom died, and she was a black lady, an older black lady, and she was so mean to me. And she's like, she's like, I expect more from you. She's like pushing and pushing and pushing all the time. And so I was in this day program, and we had like sewing class and acupuncture and all these things. And she was like my everything. Even though she was so mean, she was like that mother figure to me. Well, she ended up leaving and going to get a new job. And I was devastated. Like, I did not do well when she left. And I ended up getting in trouble and going back to jail. I ended up failing my probation and going back to jail. And when I went to jail, I was then sentenced to community corrections, which is a halfway house. And I sat in jail and I waited for the halfway house. And when the halfway house came and picked me up, I got there, and this was a whole new experience, super scary, never, done anything like that before. But when I got there, I walked in and they told me to have a seat in the cafeteria, and, I'll wait and, have my intake and all that stuff happen. So I'm just sitting there waiting, and in the cafeteria comes Cara, my old case manager. And she looked at me, and like, I even today, I'm nearly 40 years old and I'm almost crying about it, because when I saw her face, she was like, I am so disappointed in seeing you right now. And I was just like, oh my God, because she knew that I was better than that. And I let her down, and I was so hurt. And I just, at that moment, I was just like, you know what? This isn't the life for me. I have to do better. I have to work harder. And I did. And after that, I never got in trouble again. And it was really hard. I mean, I had a job for $6 an hour when I was in the halfway house. It was pretty bad. And I had to not only pay to be there, but also save money to get an apartment and things of that nature. um, but I did that, and I worked my butt off. And even to this day, I found her on LinkedIn recently, last year, and she's like, I am blown away. She was like, I knew that this was you, but you wanted to sit in your sorrow. And I was like, wow, that is so relevant for so many of us. You know what I mean? We sit in something that happened to us, and we accept that as us, as that's who we are. Um, and that's what happens to a lot of homeless people. Something happens, and they're not able to overcome that grief. Um, and it holds on to them. And
You're making me cry right now. I literally have tears in my eyes. That is such a beautiful
yeah,
story.
and it's a hard story. But she is like, I cannot believe what I'm seeing. She was like, you are the beautiful girl that I remember. And I'm like, I'm almost 40. And I was a teenager then. And so to hear her, like, still love me and be one of those people in the system that wanted better for me, you don't find that. You don't find that very often. Those people are not out there that genuinely love you, that genuinely want
Mhm.
better for you. There are so many people that even help homeless people, but they just want to, like give them a meal and walk away, or hand them a gift card and walk away. But I'm like, no. There's so much more to that person. There's so much more to us, and we just need to bring back that sense of community, because they are a part of our community, and they need to know that. I'm like, you're a part of my community. I'm getting taxed for you, buddy. You are a part of my community. I'm gonna make sure you're good. But it's for real, like so many people are like,
Yeah.
I don't want to pay taxes for this and that. I'm like, but you already are. You already are paying for that. So won't you make it cheaper on yourself and just help them? It'll be cheaper if we all just help them. And there was a study put out. The Department of HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development, in I think 2010, put out a study that said in order to end homelessness in America, it would cost $20 billion, and homelessness would be absolved by the year 2020. Ta-da!
Hmm.
I'm like, so hey, question, it's 2020. What are we doing? You know what I mean? And so
Mhm.
that didn't happen, obviously. And we still have over 500,000 homeless community members in our country. And so going forward, we need to realize, what are we doing wrong? Where are we missing the mark? And I think that we're missing the mark because we're dehumanizing people. We are categorizing someone as other versus them just being a part of our community. Because just like a mom, I'm going to go to my kids' school for their events. I'm going to put money into their fundraisers, their book fairs and all this stuff, the same way we need to do for those homeless community members, because they're in our community. If you go and you've passed this guy for the last 5 years in your community, he could have not been homeless by now. But because we keep
Yeah.
passing him up, we're allowing him to stay there because we're not finding out what specifically he needs and how we can meet those needs. And so for us in the Bautista Project Inc., that's exactly what we do. We're creating individualized plans to meet that specific person's needs. Because what I learned from being in the system, the homeless system and the criminal justice system, was that when you put 100 people in the same class and in the same program, you're going to get 10 to 20 of those people that succeed. But the rest of those people didn't succeed, and you wasted your money on the other 80 people because that's not what they needed. If they need mental health care first, then that's what you have to take care of first. If they need physical health care, you need to take care of that first. If you're putting them in housing first, which is a lot of communities, a lot of counties do that. They do rapid rehousing and they put them in a house first. If they're not mentally capable of maintaining that home, if they don't have a job or they're not mentally capable of keeping a job, they cannot maintain that home. So they will re-enter the homeless system within 17 to 24 months. And so that, again, that's
Mm.
a whole recidivism kind of cycle that we're not really combating, because we're slapping
Mhm.
so many band-aids. We're slapping band-aids on all of these issues instead of, pulling off the band-aid and cleaning out the wound and letting it heal. Instead, we cover it with the band-aid, and then the band-aid eventually comes off again.
Yeah. So after you became an army spouse and moved out of, where you were from and have now PCSed several times, and, from what you were saying, you always get involved in the communities. Like, how do you keep this work going every time you move? How do you find a way to just kind of get into your new community, I guess?
So I just kind of jump in head first. Google has been my best friend. And so moving from New York here to Tampa, literally I just Googled homeless shelters in Tampa. and I called these shelters. I'm like, hey, do you guys need anything? You need hygiene, food? And usually when you find those shelters, especially grouped together in the kind of the same area, you know that there's going to be a large homeless population. And so that's kind of how we just make our way into the community. So when we came here, we actually came here with stuff from New York to give out. We literally had a bin of blessing bags or belonging bags in the car to hand out here. So as soon as we got here, literally, we had to get rid of the stuff because we had a lot of stuff. And so we went to the first shelter we called, and they said they were accepting items. And so we went and we handed out items there, and we realized that there was a large homeless population there. And so we kind of embedded ourselves there within that shelter, and got to know the people there and got to know kind of the system in Tampa and how things worked here for homeless community members. And I mean, if you hang out, if you've ever volunteered at a homeless shelter, like, homeless people are the coolest people because they will tell you everything you need to know about life. And they have all the life hacks that Pinterest doesn't even have, like everything. And so, like, we were hanging out there. Literally, we moved here in November of 2019, and we had our Christmas party was there at the shelter. And I got on Facebook and I'm like, hey, friends, we're having a Christmas party at the homeless shelter. Will you help me? And my friends were like, of course. And we ended up having food, gifts for every single person. And I mean real gifts, not hygiene stuff, because those are not gifts. That is a basic necessity. And a lot of people kind of confuse that. A lot of people will give like hygiene stuff for Christmas to homeless people. And I'm like, we all need that stuff. And so we went out and we bought, the center needed a printer. They had a black and white printer in 2019. I'm not really sure why still, but I'm like, printers aren't that expensive. But we ended up buying them a printer, a bookshelf, books, board games. Everybody got personal gifts there. And then the people that worked there, because they were also homeless people that worked there, like worked the desk and all that stuff, they got special gifts. And all the ladies got the little Coach wristlets. And, at the Coach outlet, wow, like, they're not too expensive. And so it was like, this is something that is different. You know what I mean? This is unique. This is a gift that they don't get. You don't see a homeless person getting something that brings a glimmer to their eye or makes them feel like they're worth something. That is so important because you don't realize how that one little thing can change someone's life. And so getting that stuff, they're like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, yes, this is yours. Don't ever give it to anyone. This belongs to you. You don't have to do anything for it. You don't owe anybody anything. This is yours. Cherish it. And so they were so excited. And the guys got Coach wallets as well. And so we were just so happy to do that. And then we had all the food, and we're so used to doing it. I cooked all the food with my family, and my kids made all the gift bags. And it's just something we do every year, everywhere we go, no matter what. We are always, doing for the homeless community, and we do it as a family. So my kids love it. They love handing out food. And my son Junior, he's 10 years old. He has autism. And so we've been working on like idioms and stuff like that. So like, in saying appropriate things at the appropriate times. And so he helps us hand out food and stuff. And so a couple of weekends ago, we go out to the homeless community, and he's helping us hand out food. And so this older gentleman comes up with his walker, and Junior grabs the sack lunch and the bottle of water and puts it on the gentleman's walker. And he goes, here's your food, old man. And I'm like, ah. And I'm like, Junior, you can't say that. And he didn't understand because the gentleman was older and he was a man. And so we're trying to get that appropriate, communication out of him. But I'm just like, I am so sorry. I'm like, and you've got to go do the whole spiel, like, Junior, he has autism, he's not really understanding what's appropriate and what's inappropriate to say. And the guy was just laughing, and he was just like, it's fine, I'm fine. I was just like, and so I was just like so freaked out. But it's just so good that they just love on my kids too. And I just love that they love seeing the kids go out every weekend with our family. They go out so everybody knows them, and that's what I want to instill in my kids, is that they're just like you and I. They're no different. There's no reason to be afraid of them. There's no reason to ignore them. They are just like you and I, and they are adults, and you will respect all adults. And so I love that they understand that, except for Junior. But I, I love that, ultimately my kids, because they do, like, if you see, like I don't want to say a normal family, but like a family that isn't ingrained in integrated in the community, in the homeless community, most people will, pull their kids away, or their kids will be afraid. My kids are like, high five, homeless guy. How are you? What are you doing? And that's how they are. And they're just like, what's your name? And, they want to know. They're like, do you need some socks? Because we have socks, and I did all this stuff for you, and I made your lunch. And so my kids just love it. And that's something that I love, because that is a lesson that they will carry into their adulthood.
Absolutely. Do they know your story?
So they kind of do. I don't think they really understand. But they have told people, because they've seen it in the magazines and stuff like that, or on the news, or on shows or whatever. And they're like, my mom used to be homeless. And so I'm just like, yes, I was homeless. And I've been to jail before too. And so I tell them, but I don't think that they truly understand, especially because we are so ingrained in this community. I mean, I go visit the youth detention center twice a month here in Tampa, Florida. So it's just something we're used to. Like, they know mommy goes to jail. And I know most people hear that. They're like, what? I'm like, well, no, I go visit, the jail. But,
Right.
and then talking about homeless community members, it's just something that's just, it's ingrained in our family. So it's not unusual to talk about. So I don't think they really understand the true depth of what that really means.
Right. But in a way, it's kind of destigmatizing it for
Yeah.
them. I don't know. I love
Yeah,
that.
for sure.
Well, Marla, this has been an incredible conversation. You've made me cry. You've made me laugh. I'm sure our listeners are feeling all the feels with us too. So thanks so much for opening up and sharing your story. If people want to get involved with the organization, how do they follow you or donate, things like that? How do they connect with you?
So anyone can go to our website at www.thebautistaprojectinc.org, or you can visit our Facebook or Instagram or Twitter at the Bautista Project Inc. And you can donate. You can just give us a shout out, leave a review if you've ever donated, because reviews help too. It's not all about money. Sharing our story, sharing our mission also helps.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there anything else that you wanted to add before you wrap up?
No, I don't think so. I love this conversation, Natalie, and thank you so much for having me on.